All right, I believe we're live. Welcome one, welcome all to Max's Mic. I'm Max and I have the mic and believe we are live. This is my second time going live today, not on this YouTube channel, of course, obviously, but I was live on VIC Radio. It was. Oh, we are live. Look at that. We're live. That is so incredibly awesome. Is there a chat? I do not know. Well, we're live. We got the college football playoffs coming up, and we've got the reveal of the bracket coming very soon. And so because of that, I've decided to go live and react to it. I was live and reacted to it last year. That was on the Instagram. This year we're going live on YouTube. And so we're going to talk about it first. Of course, the bracket going to be revealed in about a half hour. And so let's break down first reactions to last night. Let's start by reacting to this weekend's games. And I'm going to start with the Tulane North Texas game. That game went about exactly as I expected. If you watched my video, I talked about how I predicted Tulane to win, and the Green Wave did win. Jake Retzlaff was 13 of 22 for 145, so he didn't really throw the ball that much, but he didn't really need to. The running game, 199 total rushing yards for Tulane, the Green Wave, that were wearing some cyan turquoise jerseys, whatever. Also winning, as I predicted, was JMU over Troy. They broke that game open late, but it was quite a convincing win, holding Troy to 177 total yards of offense while producing JMU 4 and 11 themselves. Now into Saturday. And on Saturday, I was 2 for 4. I correctly predicted Texas Tech over BYU. Texas Tech clobbered BYU. BYU's done. Their season's over. They do not belong. They do not stand a chance. They're done. When you look at Georgia, Alabama, this game was a dismantling by Georgia, who scored a touchdown in every single quarter. One score every quarter, 28-7 victory. Alabama, 209 yards. They had 75 total yards of offense at halftime. Alabama did. 75. I understand that the committee definitely ranked Alabama, and I definitely understand the opinion of there's no reason that Alabama should be penalized for their performance in a championship game, especially the position that they're in, being the 9th-ranked team with only 2 losses at the time. There's no reason that a team below them should move up. And so I do think that. Let me move this out of the frame. I don't like that this yellow post-it note reminder for myself is in frame. I do feel that I guess Alabama should be in, but they got dismantled. I mean, that was a horrible performance. Ty Simpson did not look like himself. He looked like the guy that had been playing the last 2 weeks, which is not good. Georgia just dominated, and for the most part, though, I feel that this game was certainly more of a Georgia destroying Alabama than it was Alabama beating up on themselves. But at the same time, I mean, come on, Alabama. You did not come prepared for this game. You were not ready, and you got smacked. Look at Georgia, 297 yards, but that's because they didn't need to do anything. Gunnar Stockton was 20 of 26 for 156 and 3 touchdowns. Just an incredibly great game. They ran. I mean, Alabama had -3 rushing yards. Yes. Was Jam Miller injured? Sure. Okay. Did Justin Jefferson get hurt in this game? Sure. Okay. But barring Jefferson, Jam Miller not being in this game, there's still no reason that you cannot create any sort of offense. There's no reason to have literally negative run game when your starter is injured. I understand, but like, this is college football. You can go and recruit guys. Look at other schools that have been able to find ways to produce. Look at schools like Michigan that has just find numerous amount of guys. Look at schools like Penn State that has 2 guys, and Ohio State that has 2 guys, and Indiana, who used 2 different running backs that were both effective. Quite honestly, their backup in Kalon, I think that is Black. I know he's Black. I don't know how to say his first name. Kalon Black. Black was 16 carries for 69 rushing yards. He averaged 4.3 yards. And then you had Roman Hemby. He had 13 carries for 52 yards. That's an average of 4 yards per carry as well. Indiana had 2 running backs averaging 4 yards per carry, and they put up 118 yards. And we'll get into Indiana in a little bit. But there's just no excuse for that poor performance. And the defense played decent. I mean, for Alabama, it wasn't terribly bad, but Ty Simpson, 19 of 39, 212 yards, one touchdown, one interception. This game really should have been 28-14. Jeremy Bernard sorry I hit you in the hands and the chest and literally everything. Sorry that Ty Simpson threw the ball in your vicinity late in that one that he dropped that ended up turning into the game sealer. But then again, that game was over by that point. But, I mean, at least it looks a little better. It's not a 3-score loss. It's a 2-score loss at that point. But even still, you get doubled up on after already having beaten them. That being Alabama having already beaten Georgia in Athens. They went into Athens and won that 24-21. But no, not a neutral site. Alabama just got rocked. We'll go into the next game that finished next, that being the Indiana-Ohio State game. And I said in my video that I made, you can go back and check it, I said Indiana looks like they're building kind of like a Michigan right now. Great run game with the backs, great defense, an incredible front seven on the defensive side, an incredible defensive line. Did anyone care to catch the final score of the Indiana-Ohio State game? Yes, it was 13-10. Anyone remember what the score was last year between Michigan and Ohio State? 13-10. Who won the rushing battle in the last 4 years? Not including this year, actually. The last 5 years of the game, who won the rushing battle? It was the team that inevitably won the game. That's how it works in Big Ten. That's how Big Ten football works. You win the run battle, you win the game. Well, guess who won the run battle? Well, it wasn't Ohio State who put up 58 rushing yards. No, it was Indiana who had 118 rushing yards. 60 more yards on the ground. The team that was actually able to establish a run game. Shocking. I wonder who knew that that was going to happen and who knew that Ohio State had no run game at all. Ryan Day does not know how to build a run game. Ryan Day knows how to coach up and build a team to win SEC football games. Ryan Day would be one of, if not the greatest SEC head coach of all time. Yes, I know Nick Saban exists, but he would be up there as an incredible SEC coach because he can coach up a good passing offense. But in the Big Ten, you got to be able to run the ball. Otherwise, they're going to bring 4 down linemen, sack your quarterback. How many times did Indiana get sacked? 5 sacks. They're going to get you 5 times, and they're just going to shut you down. They're going to shut you down. Flat out, just deny you of being able to do anything in the game. And that's what Indiana did. I mean, well and truly, that's what Indiana did. They just shut down Ohio State. Ohio State could get nearly nothing going. Yes, I know, the missed field goal at the end of the game. But even if that kicker makes it, I do truly think that with 2 minutes remaining, and I believe Indiana had 2 timeouts, that Fernando Mendoza, the way that this game had been going, would be able to march downfield, get his team into field goal range. The kicker would hit the field goal, and Indiana wins at 16-13 instead of 13-10. Genuinely believe so. And genuinely did not see any evidence in this entirety of the game to prove otherwise. That Indiana would not be able to get down into field goal range. They didn't need to score a touchdown, which, quite honestly, wasn't expecting them to be able to do so the way that the game started in the first quarter went. But they did score in this game, Indiana did. But Indiana just dismantled but Indiana took down Ohio State. They beat them through the running game, through the establishment of the ability to move and scramble with a quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, and his ability to Mendoza, I think, just won the Heisman to solidify that he's the best quarterback in this class. And I think he actually finally proved and convinced me that he's deserving of a first-round grade. I was really hesitant, really iffy, but then again, like, the only reason that would make me think that a quarterback would be taken early is the value of a quarterback and the amount of value that NFL franchises and organizations put upon the quarterback position. But it would have been kind of like the J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix kind of thing, where I did not believe that any of them deserved to be first-round graded quarterbacks. And to this point, I think the only one that's proven me wrong was Bo Nix. But Michael Penix Jr. and J.J. McCarthy both still did not deserve to be taken in the first round. Anyways, Mendoza might actually have done that. Mendoza might have proved that he deserved to be a number one. He can move. He's mobile. He can get out of the pocket, which you need in the modern day of the NFL. You need a quarterback that can move. The days of the immobile quarterbacks are starting to go to the wayside, and there's very few of them left. I think the last 2 are Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. are realistically like the last two quarterbacks that don't really have that much mobility. I think we're kind of gone. The Mannings, the Breezes, although Breeze could kind of move a little bit. Oh, and Burrow. Burrow isn't all that mobile. But then again, I think a lot of that has more to do with the amount of injuries he's had than his just flat out ability to run the ball. But the modern NFL is you got to run the ball. Or you got to be able to run with the ball and move out of the pocket. And you got to be able to scramble, especially when you're Mendoza and you're going to end up on a team like the Jets, who don't have the greatest O-line, although it's definitely a lot better than the Giants' O-line. I'm going to be quite frank and be straight up about it. But even still, I simply think that Mendoza looked great. Mendoza looked really good. 15 to 23 for 222 yards, a touchdown and an interception. The interception was really not his fault. It was, one, a shit play, really, really bad play call. And yeah, that was about it. And a good play by Ohio State. A great read, knowing the rules. That's why you got to read the rule book, because at the time I thought it was a pass interference. I didn't come to realize that you can full-on run right through a guy, even if he's a receiver that's trying to catch a ball. You can run right through him so long as he's behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, you can just tackle that guy and blow him up, and that's exactly what Ohio State did, and it led to the interception. We got about 20 minutes until reveal, so I got plenty of time to talk about the last game, which was Duke and Virginia, and it happened. The ACC's biggest nightmare happened, and JMU's greatest glory took place as the Duke Blue Devils beat Virginia. They were 7-5. They're now 8-5. Duke Blue Devils that are unranked beat 17th ranked Georgia, won the ACC, and now I believe that no ACC team deserves to be in the playoff. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But I'm going to be honest. They do not deserve to be in the playoff. There is no reason for an ACC team to be in the playoff. Duke definitely not at 5 losses, and the teams they've lost to, just not good. Just not good. And so it was just a great game, a great finish. Virginia marching all the way down the field in like a minute, and then just to lose in the way that they did. It is incredible. So, now let's get into the bracket. My predictions and what I think is going to go down. So, the number 1 team, this was the bracket before the playoffs. We had 1 was Ohio State, 2 was Indiana, 3 Georgia, 4 Texas Tech, 5 was Oregon, 6 was Ole Miss, 7 Texas A&M, 8 Alabama, 8 was Oklahoma, 9 Alabama, 10 Notre Dame, and then 11 and 12 were up in the air. But at the time, 11 was Virginia, and 12 would have been Tulane because of their rankings. Well, Tulane won, so they're in. JMU won, so they're the highest ranked conference team. They're in. So 11's going to be Tulane, 12 is going to be JMU. Now what we're looking at is the rest of the teams. 1's going to be Indiana. We know that. 2's going to be Ohio State. 3 will be Georgia. 4 will be Texas Tech. They all won. Ohio State lost, but it was a close competitive game. There's no reason for them to drop below Georgia, I don't think, although Georgia looked incredible, but then again, Ohio State's defense looked great. So that's what I think is going to go down. 1 Indiana, 2 Ohio State, 3 Georgia, 4 Texas Tech. 5, I think, is where Oregon is going to stay. 6 is where I think Ole Miss will stay. 7 is where I think Texas A&M will stay. 8 is where I believe Oklahoma will stay. Now we get into 9 and 10. 9 is currently Alabama, with 10 being Notre Dame. And everyone's all up in arms that Miami, who's not in, who had beaten Notre Dame, should be in because, you got to remember head-to-head. Now, no matter what decision the committee makes, obviously people are always going to be upset. First of all, poor committee who, if only BYU won, then BYU and Texas Tech would be in and they wouldn't have to worry about this because everyone would kind of drop down a bar and Texas and BYU would get in over both Notre Dame and Miami because they won their conference championship. First of all, what I think should have happened is they should have just made an executive ruling and made both Notre Dame and Miami play a game against each other. But here's what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is the fact that, okay, I know Miami, they beat Notre Dame in the first game of the season by 3 points. Wasn't like they really stomped them. It was, yes, did they control the first half? Did they control the first 3 quarters? Sure, but then they gave up 17 points in the fourth, and Notre Dame marched right back, and they started looking better. And since then, Notre Dame, yes, did they lose the next week? Sure, but they lost to currently 7th-ranked Texas A&M. Notre Dame then went on to beat Purdue 56-30, beat Arkansas 56-13, beat Boise State 28-7, beat NC State 36-7, beat ranked USC 34-24, beat BC 25-10, beat Navy, who's ranked. Are USC and Navy still ranked? I don't think USC is, but Navy, oh yeah, both of them are still ranked. So that's 2 ranked wins right there. Pitt is no longer ranked, but they beat Pitt, who was ranked at the time. They clobbered Syracuse, and then they knocked off Stanford. What did Arkansas do since that game? They beat Bethune, whatever. They beat USF, who was ranked at the time, but now is no longer. They beat Florida. They beat an FSU team that was ranked at the time, but now is no longer. They lost to Louisville, who's not ranked, a 8-4 Louisville team, who, might I add, this is a Louisville team that lost to Virginia. They did beat Pitt. They did beat JMU, but, like, they lost to Cal and Clemson and SMU down the stretch. Cal, Clemson, and SMU. They lost to Cal and Clemson. Just to put in perspective, this Louisville team. Now, Miami, they do beat Stanford, but then in overtime, they lose to SMU. So I understand many people's conversations of head-to-head, but I think head-to-head should be the tiebreaker. But in this case, there is no tiebreaker because when you look at the losses, it's 2 ranked losses for Notre Dame, but they also have 2 ranked wins. Right? Yeah, 2 ranked wins. 2 wins over teams still currently ranked. Whereas Miami has 2 unranked losses and wins over 1 currently ranked school, being Notre Dame. So who's been improving and getting better as the season's gone on? It's Notre Dame, who had an inexperienced quarterback in C.J. Carr, who's now all of a sudden getting so much better and has improved, compared to Carson Beck, who, quite honestly, has been slowly getting worse and worse and worse, almost, it feels like, just based on the fact that he was some 3 years ago at Georgia, it was literally just last year when he was considered to be the number 1 quarterback prospect coming out of school. Then he played horribly. Then he got hurt. Then he missed the playoffs. And then he transferred to go with his girlfriend at Miami, just for them to break up before the season even started. And now I genuinely do not think that Miami deserves to be in. I don't think Miami deserves to be in. Granted, I talked about on my show not on my show, on the episode, the video I uploaded on Thursday, that I don't want any ACC school to get in I don't want an ACC school to get in so that it sends a message to the ACC from the committee saying, hey, fix your playoffs, fix how your ranking systems and your standings work so that way we can actually get a ranked team in. Because if Miami beats Virginia, which I believe they do, Miami beats Virginia, one, they're in no matter what, but, like, at least you have a reason to keep them in. Or they lose, and then you have a reason to keep them out. That's a lot more clearer to a lot of people. But, again, to be quite honest, and to be even more honest, I don't even think Alabama should be in. I think both Notre Dame and Miami should honestly go in over Alabama. But that's not going to happen because the precedent that sets is going to lead to so many more problems than the conversation and arguments that would be made between whether or not Notre Dame or Miami getting in. But Alabama looked so bad that it's making me think that there needs to be some more games being played during this championship week. That we need to find a way to put in a caveat that if you're in contention, there should be a ruling that states, first of all, put in an extra week so that the Army Navy game can be its own week or whatever, and that way there's that bye week in between the championship games and the playoff, which I think actually exists already. I could be wrong, but actually it does already exist. So then this week, this championship week, on Thursday or the following Tuesday, honestly, there should be games between any teams that are in possible contention for a playoff spot that are in debate. So we should get to see Miami play Notre Dame. We should get to see, like, it really feels like almost that's the only game. Maybe Ole Miss versus A&M for a seeding thing, or A&M and Oklahoma, and then Ole Miss and Oregon for a seeding thing. But nonetheless, it's just how things work out. And I genuinely believe that when you look at the resume, besides the head-to-head, you look past that, because that's the only thing Miami has over Notre Dame. Notre Dame averaging 42 points per game offensively while allowing 17.6 to Miami, who's only scoring 34, but they're allowing 13.8, so slightly better. Miami's got 34 sacks. Notre Dame's defense has produced 35. Notre Dame has 70 total touchdowns scored as an offense. That's second most in league. And also, yeah, Notre Dame's offense is just on another level compared to Miami, whose defense is just a bit better. But, like, it's just, I don't know. Yeah, I would, if I'm making this, I've got Indiana 1, I've got Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Texas Tech 4, Oregon 5, Ole Miss 6, A&M 7, Oklahoma 8. Yeah, Notre Dame, or Alabama 9, Notre Dame 10, and then you just slot in Tulane and JMU in. And I think that it stays the way that it is, well and truly. I think the only way to really fix this problem for future years is to simply just have the SEC schools and the Big Ten schools, instead of playing these nobodies, and the ACC schools too. Instead of playing these nobodies, these conferences should be playing each other in more games. Like, again, I could see a world where multiple loss teams, and it's starting to move, and now that the SEC, and what's going to happen is next year, and we're gearing up for it next year, we're going to have SEC schools like Texas and Alabama, or excuse me, not really Alabama, I don't expect Alabama, but Texas, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss trying to make arguments for why they should be in with 3 and 4 loss seasons, but it's because Ole Miss dominated everybody except for Alabama, Oregon, and Texas, who are all three of the top 5-6 schools in the nation, and those are their 3 losses. Like, you look at Texas, they lost to Georgia, they lost to Ohio State. If they beat Florida, I think Texas has a great argument for why they should be in. If you flip it, and instead of them having lost to Florida, their loss was to Vanderbilt in a close game, and their Georgia loss was a bit closer, as in like a 2-score loss instead of the 25-point loss that it was, because of the fact they beat A&M, I mean, I think maybe you can have an argument. Of course, there's a lot of ifs being played here, but what I'm getting at is the simple fact that things are about to get even more convoluted, conflicted, and intense. But for now, 7 minutes out, getting geared up, getting excited. I'm really excited to see what the committee chooses and elects to do, because, again, the committee is almost like, or the committee is the Supreme Court of NCAA. Basically, like the Supreme Court, they don't actually enforce laws, they just kind of interpret laws and rulings and decide whether or not something is constitutional or not. That's what the committee is about to do today, and they're about to set a new precedent. And I think that people need to understand that precedents are being set, because this is now only the second year of this 12-team bracket. This is a new frontier that we are exploring, and so because of that, it's going to come with these quirks, these wrinkles, it's going to be ironed out. And it's going to take time. And now with the SEC making some changes, it's going to take time. And next year, there's going to be these whole new arguments. And every year, there's going to be arguments. But if NCAA decides to and elects to stick with this 12-team format for years to come, then it's going to become clearer and clearer. And unfortunately, though, it'll maybe potentially be taking away from the excitement and the energy, or feeding into the excitement and the energy of who's going to get picked in the bracket. But I do think that it's going to get a lot clearer. It's going to be a lot easier to understand and see and whatever. But again, moving forward, I do believe that what we're going to see is just change. We're going to see change. It's going to take time. Things are going to work out. And today is going to be a monumental, major day because it's going to set the table for the future. It's going to set the table for how much value a head-to-head. Sorry, I got the stream over here of ESPN's broadcast when they're going to finally reveal it. So it's to my left. So when you see me looking to my left, that's because I've got a separate screen over there showing everything that's going on. So yeah, December 8th is when. Oh, that's the selection show is the first, whatever. So we'll see. We're gonna see in about 5 minutes or so. We're gonna find out. But again, this is going to be setting the table for things to come in the future. This is going to be the establishment. How much value does head-to-head wins versus losses hold? How much value does a ranked win and a ranked loss compared to an unranked win and unranked loss hold? Let's see. They're showing some things, and yes, some of the analysts on ESPN believe that Alabama is out and both Notre Dame and Miami are in. And I can fully understand the argument for that, but again, I don't understand the value. Like, if Alabama were to get eliminated and not make the college football playoff, it brings up the question of, why did Alabama want to play in this game in the first place? What's the value in playing in a championship game if you risk losing and then all of a sudden your draft stocks? I think these championship games should only increase and not decrease your opportunity. And it was revealed that last year with SMU, who lost to Clemson but weren't eliminated because, again, the value of your ranking and the ability to not lose value due to a conference loss. Now, granted, that was an overtime game-winning field goal compared to Alabama, who lost by 3 touchdowns. But again, I say that if Alabama does not make it into the playoff, then the value of winning a conference championship or competing in a conference championship game, especially the fact that they're in the SEC, which I believe is the most highly competitive, top-of-the-tier conference in all of football, if Alabama, who lost it, granted, but made it, were able to compete in the SEC to a point where they made it to the college football, or to the SEC championship game, I believe that they should not be penalized and they should still be in. Now, do they maybe drop down to the 10 and Notre Dame moves up to the 9? I could see that. That's not being totally penalized. You're being slightly, because you did get kind of clobbered. And it really was, the game really felt worse than even the numbers really say. And to be fair, I mean, they do have 1, 2, 3, but like, again, they have 4 wins over ranked opponents with there are 3 losses. One was to FSU, who's no longer ranked anymore. One was to Oklahoma, who's still ranked, and their third being Georgia. So they have 1 unranked loss and 2 ranked losses, including the SEC championship loss. But they've also won 4 ranked games, and they were SEC schools. And again, when you want to go into the weeds even further, it was in Athens, at Missouri, South Carolina is not ranked, but they went. It's another thing that needs to be understood about the SEC is that the SEC is one of the hardest. It's always hard to go on the road and win games, but I feel like the SEC is like the hardest conference to go on the road and win a game in. You look back at last year and you look at Georgia and remember back to when they almost lost to Kentucky in Kentucky. And you look back at when it just that game and how Kentucky was hanging around and Georgia couldn't do much of anything. They had 262 yards to Kentucky's 284. Kentucky had 35 minutes time on possession and dominated. 11 more minutes time on possession Kentucky did in that game than Georgia. What I'm bringing up is just how difficult it is to win on the road in the SEC. So I could see Alabama falling to the 10 from the 9 to the 10 and Notre Dame jumping them. I don't see Alabama falling to the 11 or 12 because that's going to be Tulane and JMU. There's no way they fall that low in the rankings. And that's not to say that they're going to fall that far, but that's to say that somehow JMU and Tulane rank a jump up in the rankings high enough to then be seated ahead of Alabama. I don't see that happening. I don't see that being a possibility. Again, I could see a world where Alabama falls to the 10. And quite frankly, that almost honestly benefits Alabama. Maybe, not really. They're still going to be on the road. Instead of playing Oklahoma, they play Texas A&M. But here we go. Countdown to ranking reveal. It is now 12. It is now time to find out who's going to be ranked where and all of that in between. But I think Alabama stays. I think everything stays. I think everything will and should stay the exact same as it is. And I just think that you slot in Tulane and you slot in JMU. But I believe that, and I mean, it definitely, these things definitely don't take away the value of the conference championship game, because you look at it and you're like, all right, if Alabama wins, they could have jumped up and made the playoffs. They could have jumped up and gotten a bye. If BYU had beaten Texas Tech, then BYU's in, and we don't even have this conversation between Notre Dame and Miami because they're both eliminated. If Virginia won, then JMU's not in. If JMU lost, they're not in. If Ohio State won, they're the 1, and in Indiana's the 2, which that's a big difference, because with Indiana jumping to the 1, they're, in my predictions, going to get the winner of the 9 versus the 8, which could be either Alabama or Oklahoma, versus having to play the 10 or the 7 being, in my, again, predicted bracket, Texas A&M or Notre Dame. So, I mean, it doesn't really make too much of a difference if you're the 1 or the 2, although it's a lot cooler to be the 1 than versus being the 2. But when it comes down to who you're playing, not much of a difference. But again, it really doesn't feel like much is taken away from the conference championship games unless Alabama's booted. If Alabama gets booted out of the playoffs, I think, one, that will be the biggest robbery and an absolute travesty. And again, I feel like different from 2 years ago when it was still 4 teams and it was Florida State getting snubbed. The difference now, I feel, is that Florida State, while they did get in, while they did win the ACC, like, they're almost their whole entire starting roster, a lot of their best players were out injured, and then you see them, they get smacked by Georgia, and it's like, yeah, that's why you weren't in, because you weren't going to do anything. You weren't going to compete like Washington competed with Texas, like Alabama competed with Michigan, like Michigan competed with Washington. Like, that just wasn't going to happen. And again, you look at last year, okay, SMU kind of got knocked around by Penn State. But to be fair, it's just like, again, setting the precedent. It was set last year that this similar thing happened last year. Very, very similar. Not exactly, because of course we're talking about teams that were outside and weren't playing in the game. But again, the ACC championship game last year, it was SMU, who was the higher seed, higher ranked team, and was in the playoffs currently, taking on Clemson, who wasn't in at the time. Clemson won, winning themselves a chance to get in, but SMU, who had already been ranked, stayed in, and Alabama didn't get in. And so that was the precedent that had been set. So I don't see a reason why sticking to that Alabama should be eliminated, because again, we're talking about not losing too much value after being eliminated. So I think Alabama stays in. I think JMU obviously gets in. I don't see a reason why Duke would get in over JMU. That would just be an absolute travesty. Granted, either one would be the 12th seed, and both would get smacked by Oregon. I don't think that either one would play any better than the other against Oregon. But at the same time, you got to think about what this means for the future, and the fact that you're putting in a 5-loss team over a 1-loss team is insane. It's just insane. So it's just, and again, it's like, and JMU had already been ranked, whereas Duke wasn't even ranked, and I believe hadn't been close to sniffing a rank all year, because of the fact that, well, it's just, we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But again, I believe that when you look at this Duke team, you lost to Illinois, you lose to Tulane, you lost to Georgia Tech, you lose to UConn, you lose to Virginia. I mean, I just don't see a way that they get in. I don't even think it's a question. I think it was, and the conversations that they were having on the broadcast of, oh, Duke's going to make an argument, you're asking the players, and the players are just like, they're not, the players knew that they were playing for an ACC championship game, not a chance to get into the college football playoff. The Duke players knew that, and you could see in their answers how they go from happy, elated, to they get asked that question, and they're just like mellow, monotone, kind of slowly talking. Yeah. I hope our strike the schedule, whatever. I was told to say in my media training before we play this game, in case this happens, like whatever, yada 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 yada. Like that was kind of how they answered the questions. That was how they answered the questions. So I think it's really clear. I think Duke knows that they're not getting in. So again, I think it's going to come down to Notre Dame and Miami. I think Notre Dame should get in. I think Notre Dame was ranked higher than Miami with a purpose. Like, there's a reason why Notre Dame was 10 and Miami was 12. And again, it wasn't even like Notre Dame was 10 and Miami was 11 and BYU was 12. No, they had BYU ranked at 11, just on the fringe, being a win and get in kind of team. Because if they win, then it clearly gave them a reason to, again, stick to the ruling of last year. And I think that is exactly what the committee was doing, was with this Big 12 championship game, they're setting themselves up just as they did last year, with Texas Tech being as high of a ranked team as they were, creating the ability to ranking BYU up there at 11, so that way, if BYU won, Texas Tech wouldn't get dropped that far. BYU would slide in because they won the conference championship, the top one of 5 highest ranking conference wins, or conference champion winners. They get in, and then both Notre Dame and Miami are out. So again, because of the fact that you had Notre Dame 2 seeds higher, you had Notre Dame at 10 and Miami at 12, I think is just a clear reason and is the clear factor as to where the committee's heads were this time last week when they were building their rankings. And so I think that it is clearly showing exactly their thought process. And so again, this revelation of my own, realizing, hey, wait, hold up, Notre Dame was 10, Miami was 12, they did this, obviously there's reasons why they have their rankings and all that, so clearly that in itself should give us the answer that they're going to put Notre Dame in, and that they weren't even considering. I think the real consideration from the committee was, does BYU or Notre Dame get in? And they thought Notre Dame's the better school, but let's keep BYU close, so that way, if they win, they get in, and then whatever, but it's also just really funny. Jake Retzlaff, the former BYU Cougar quarterback, is now in the college football playoff, but with Tulane because of funny stuff. Funny stuff. Look up that story if you don't know. But so yeah, so that's where we're sitting as we wait for as they build up the anticipation. They stall. They say the show starts at 12, and then they don't release the rankings until like 12:20 because they want to wait for people to start viewing, and they want people to realize that it's on. And then the people that are scrolling the TV, oh, this is on, and then other people are like they're slowly coming, and then you can milk it for more advertising and this, that, and the other thing. We got Nick Saban now on talking, and Saban, coach of was he the coach of Alabama when they got snubbed? No, he was the coach of Alabama when they got in, because they had won. And that's another thing, is the power of being the conference champion, and how that was established back in 23 when Alabama beat Georgia, and then Alabama got in over Georgia because Alabama had won the SEC Conference Championship, and Georgia lost it. So, exclusive reveal, yada, yada, yada. Saban's still talking. Alabama resume, 6th strength of schedule. Strength of record, ranked 10. Record's 10-3. Wins over Georgia in the regular season, and Vandy, who's still ranked. Let's talk about how a crazy run. You know, while we have the time, let's talk about Heisman front runners, and let's talk about a crazy run that Vanderbilt went on. Diego Pavia, 3,000 passing yards, absolutely incredible. 27 of 8. You look over at Julian Sayin, he was 31-6 for 3,300 passing yards. But I think it is really clear who the Heisman is. I think it's Fernando Mendoza. Yes, did Julian Sayin have an incredible season where he had an insane completion percentage, 78%? Sure. But my reason for why Fernando Mendoza should be the Heisman, well, actually, I don't even think Mendoza should be the Heisman. I know exactly who my Heisman pick is. It's Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love. 1,300 rushing yards, 1,600 all-purpose yards, 21 touchdowns, averaging 137 rushing yards per game. Jeremiah Love is my guy for the Heisman. No, I'm trolling. I am big trolling. Yeah, did I want Ashton Genty to go and win the Heisman? Yes, last year. Yes. Do I think Ashton Genty should have won the Heisman last year? Yes. But Jeremiah Love had 1,300 rushing yards. Ashton Genty last year had 2,600 rushing yards. Ashton Genty had twice as many rushing yards as Jeremiah Love did. He also had 30 touchdowns, averaging 195 yards per game. Whereas, again, we go back to this year and we pull up Notre Dame and we go see Jeremiah Love, and you see that he only had 1,300 again. 10 less carries on average per game, 137 yards, 21 touchdowns. So, like, yeah, no. My Heisman pick is Fernando Mendoza. My top 3 is Mendoza, Jeremiah Love. I would throw Diego Pavia in just for the fun little story behind it. And honestly, I wouldn't include Julian Sayin, and here's why. Here is why I wouldn't include Julian Sayin in my voting for Heisman. I wouldn't include Julian Sayin because, one, his class. He's a young gun freshman. The fact that you don't even include him is going to provide adversity and I think fuel a fire within this kid that is either going to make him or is going to break him. And I would love to see, and this would be incredible, and honestly, this would be even better for Sayin, building his resume for the eventual NFL draft that he's going to be a part of, as I believe, will go to the NFL. But if you don't even include him now, and then he uses that as fuel to his fire to then come back next year, do even better, all this, that, and the other thing, and then he puts up an even better season, would just kind of build an even better resume, would make it more rewarding for him, would build a storyline. And come on, it's sports is an entertainment. It's a business and it's entertainment. It's an entertainment business. And so I could see the Heisman voters not including Julian Sand for whatever reason, but to build up anticipation for next year when he's got a chip on his shoulder because he believes he was snubbed. But well and truly, I think Mendoza's the winner, and it's not just because of the head-to-head win. It's the fact that he is significantly more mobile. His wide receiving core is not nearly as good as Julian Sand has at Ohio State with Carnell Tate, with Jeremiah Love, not Jeremiah Smith, excuse me, with Max Clare. It's just not the same. He doesn't have the same guys. He doesn't have the same O-line. He doesn't have the same receiver errors. And yet he's putting up better numbers. Well and truly. He has better numbers. He looked better last night in the championship game against a better defense, let's be real, that Ohio State has. He seems like a better leader. He seems like a better everything. Julian Sand just kind of looked a little young. So I would go with Mendoza as my Heisman winner on the number one team, the best player on the number one team. That also kind of checks out. Let's see. So, college football selection principles, process to distinguish, strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents, unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected past performances or likely will affect postseason performance. Interesting that they include that at the bottom. Could that be hinting to the fact that Ole Miss drops? That could be interesting. I could see Ole Miss falling to 7. I don't think they fall down to 8 past Oklahoma. But I could see them falling a bit lower. I could certainly see that happening. But we'll see. Certainly with the just the abnormalities of Lane Kiffin, which again I understand the resources, the money, the everything, but honestly, if I'm Ole Miss, good riddance, because I'd want if I were to be running a program, I want a head coach that is there because they want to win with my program, not because they want the money or the fame or anything else that comes with it. I'd want a coach that wants to go and win. And Lane Kiffin is building a program that can go and win. He's building a winning program. 11-1 Ole Miss. Their one loss, 43-35 to Georgia. And again, he went on this run with Trinidad Chambliss as his quarterback, who coming into the season wasn't even the starter. Austin Simmons was, but Simmons got hurt early in the season, so Chambliss had to step in and put up 3,000 passing yards, 18 touchdowns on 3 interceptions. Incredible season from Trinidad Chambliss. And so he's building a program. He's proven that he's a great coach. We look at some of the guys like Jackson Dart that's now in the league, and Trey Harris, the wide receiver. I think there might have been another receiver, but I can't remember his name right now. There's a corner too that I think has been playing well, but the program that's being Walter Nolan, the D tackle that's now with the Cardinals, and it is doing a solid job. Let's see if I can pull up Walter Nolan's stats real quick while I'm talking about Ole Miss. But now I'm actually intrigued that ESPN included that little tagline at the bottom, and now I'm excited to see could Ole Miss now drop. Walter Nolan's been injured a bit, but he does have a sack, so he's already recorded a sack, and he has a touchdown. He scored a touchdown? Why do I not remember when he scored a touchdown? What game did he score a touchdown? I don't remember. I remember him scoring a touchdown. Huh. I guess he recovered a fumble for a touchdown in a game. I don't remember, but it says he does have a touchdown. But he's been injured, but he's also looked relatively decent on a Cardinals defense that's getting better. Slowly if they stay healthy. I think this Cardinals defense is getting better, but I was surprised to see Lane Kiffin go, but he did, and now I'm intrigued. Let's see. Let's go now. Now I'm gonna go back through this. So, Indiana 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia. I mean, I guess I could see Georgia being 2, but I doubt it. But whatever. 4 being Texas Tech, 5 being Oregon. Could 6 be A&M? I don't know if Oklahoma would fall past. Yeah, Ole Miss had already beaten Oklahoma 34-26, so I just don't see Oklahoma moving up. And Oklahoma's other loss was to Texas 23-6. Oklahoma kind of smacked around Michigan a bit. They beat Auburn. They beat Tennessee. They did beat Alabama, and they beat Missouri, and they beat LSU. But like basically everyone beat LSU. So LSU's not even ranked. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I could see Ole Miss falling behind Texas A&M, but I don't see them dropping any further than that. Now I'm on the idea with LSU reminiscing, and you know what? It's commercial, so let's reminisce. Let's take a second to reminisce on the quarterbacks coming into this season. The top quarterbacks, it seemed like we're gonna be. You had Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. You had Drew Aller out of Penn State, who's now apparently still going to go to the draft. You had, Jesus. You had Lenore Sellers out of South Carolina. You had John Mateer, who was kind of rising earlier in the season, and Mateer looked pretty good. Certainly not the Heisman winner that many thought he would be after the first couple of weeks of the season, but he looked pretty good. But just the way that this season shook out was just pure chaos. And it was honestly great. Great for college football that this season ended up being pure chaos. But quite insane. The amount of coach firings is kind of ridiculous, to be quite honest. I'm a pure believer of you hire a guy and you go tell him to build. Now, when you look at a guy like James Franklin, who's just not been able to do it and not being able to win the big game and whatever, what have you, and just the collapse that was going on with Penn State's one thing. But, and I guess with Florida and Billy Napier too, that kind of does make some sense. But it's just kind of crazy how this year shook out, and guys like Carson Beck, and it's crazy how guys like Carson Beck, who 2 years ago, no, that was 3 years ago. No, maybe it was, yeah. He was top ranked with Georgia, highly sought after quarterback, him and Milroe, and then they both choose to stay in the year. Yeah, they both choose to stay because they know that they're not going to be a top guy in a draft that included Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May. They knew they weren't going to be top guys, so both Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck decided to stay in college to play one more year, to try to build up their resume, to then be the top guy next year. Then it ends up being this kid, Cam Ward. And then Carson Beck, who had another year of eligibility, decides to stay another year because, well, one, he's making a ton of money. But two, he's also not going to get drafted all that high. Goes to Miami, where Cam Ward was the guy who did get drafted one. But, of course, that's not why he went. He went because of his girlfriend. Or ex-girlfriend now at this point. But again, it's just crazy how things have shaken out. How you think, oh yeah, you stay, you make all the money, you build up your draft stock, but your stock could also go down even without you getting hurt. And a lot of people think, oh, stock goes down because of an injury, which that is what happened to Drew Aller. But also Aller wasn't playing well anyways. So yeah, I mean, Drew Aller got kind of exposed as a Tyler Warren merchant, as kind of comedic. In a team, and with a team where the talk of the town was, okay, they've got Katron Allen, they've got Nick Singleton, the improved the running back duo, who's now getting even better, and then he had a good O-line, and he had upgraded weapons at the wide receiver position. And even still, with all those factors in mind, just didn't play well. Grunkemeyer, I've heard some people talk about him, but like Traber Pena and these receivers that they bring in, it just wasn't it for Penn State. It just wasn't it. All right. Are they Are we finally getting announcements? We are. Number 1 is Indiana. Wow, shocker. Surprising. Whoa! Indiana is your number 1. The only currently still undefeated team, and the next team to have the opportunity to go and win an entire season and never lose. The last ones doing that being Michigan when they went and won the Natty back in 23. Of course, Ohio State had one loss last year, that being to Michigan. Again, I said it if you didn't listen to my radio show on VIC Radio this morning, but watching that Ohio State game felt like watching an episode of Borat with this is my neighbor. Like it's like Borat's Michigan. It's like, this is my neighbor, Ohio State. We win. We've won the game. They must win the game. We get a natty. They get a natty. We've won a Big Ten championship since COVID. They cannot afford to win a Big Ten championship since COVID. It's Ohio State. Speaking of the devil, and the devil that they are, they're number 2. Wow, shocking, surprising. Okay, everything's kind of going as expected. Ohio State is number 2, and the Buckeyes. I mean, they played, and again, you talk about the missed field goal, but Indiana also missed a field goal, and I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that your defense was playing out of their goddamn minds, and you couldn't be able to produce anything on offense. So, which is what I expected. I expected them to struggle on offense, and then they did. Let's see, who's number 3 going to be? I believe it's going to be Georgia. To the absolute shock horror of, well, nobody. I mean, I don't expect anybody to be surprised when Georgia gets announced. And there it is. It's Georgia. Wow, surprising. Yep, Georgia will be the 3 as another conference championship winner. The Bulldogs looked so good last night. It was actually incredible. I mean, Georgia just ran the table. Gunnar Stockton playing incredible. If you had told me this time last year Gunnar Stockton is going to go off, and let me pull up his stats just to get exact. Gunnar Stockton's going to throw for nearly 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns on 5 interceptions, and have a 70% completion percentage. I would have told you you're out of your mind. I would have told you were out of your mind. He looked so bad last year playing in replace of Carson Beck, who got injured in the SEC championship game against Texas, as Texas Tech is announced 4th. But I would have told you were insane. But here we are a year later, and this kid actually figured it out. He actually put itself together, and I talked about in the show how, when I thought Alabama's defense was going to play a bit better, but I also, I guess, thought their offense was going to be able to produce. And when I say a bit better, I mean Alabama's defense played well. They didn't play phenomenal. They allowed 28 points, but again, it was only a touchdown every quarter. It wasn't like the defense got steamrolled. It wasn't like Georgia was really having long, sustained drives. It's just Alabama couldn't sustain a drive offensively. All right, so we've got Texas Tech at 4, expecting Oregon to be here at 5, and then everything gets exciting after. My final predictions, Oregon 5. I'm going to go A&M 6, Ole Miss 7, Oklahoma 8, Alabama 9, Notre Dame 10, Tulane 11, and JMU 12 is going to be my prediction. We're going to see. It is Oregon 5. Bang! There we go. Oregon is 5. Not surprised. Really not surprised. The Oregon Ducks playing a great, just playing well. They're having a really nice season, and I talked about Indiana doing this, and I briefly mentioned it, but it feels like Oregon's kind of doing the same thing. Indiana and Oregon recognize what it means to play Big Ten football, and they recognize that Big Ten football is the better way to play football. That is, you run the ball, ground and pound, and you only throw when you need to, which isn't as often as you're running the ball. Smash mouth, run it down their throat, and then that opened up the passing game and downfield because you're forcing a defense to bring all their players in, stack the box to stop the run, and then you do a quick pass. Guys are open downfield, whatever, what have you. Oregon also great defense. Dante Moore, who I don't expect to come out. I think he's going to stay another year, but he's been playing. Mateo Uyunglele. 6 is Ole Miss. Okay. So I am slightly off. 6 stays Ole Miss. Okay. So I was just slightly misled by that that little caveat of players being injured, coaches, and outside noise. Ole Miss is going to stay at 6. I think that is rightly and duly yeah, I think that is kind of rightly and duly deserved. Uh, but A&M did have an incredible run and a great season, but I think Ole Miss did end up with more wins over ranked opponents come the end of the season. Um, I think, right? I mean, they did beat Oklahoma, Tulane. 7 is Texas A&M. We're not surprised. I think they actually had the same amount of numbers, but the teams that Ole Miss beat were higher ranked, and the team they lost to is also higher ranked compared to A&M. So I guess that's why things are different. Is because that's why Ole Miss is higher, because the team that Ole Miss lost to is a higher ranked team than Texas A&M, and the ranked teams that Ole Miss beat are higher ranked than the ranked teams that Texas A&M beat. All right, this is where things start to get exciting. Oklahoma here and at 8, or excuse me, not yet, but I'm predicting Oklahoma at 8, and then after that, it's going to get really, really dicey. They probably will go to commercial or something. Oklahoma is 8. All right. That is so everything so far gone as expected. The top 8 is exactly where it was. And again, I think that, I mean, well, I do think it would be kind of cool and exciting to add another week of games where the players, the schools will play a ranked opponent close to where they are to have the chance to move up or down or whatever. And it's almost like you're defending your spot versus you get a home game, and it would be like Vanderbilt would go to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma would be home and defend their spot, whereas Vanderbilt's going and challenging, and Texas would go play whoever, Notre Dame, and Michigan would go play Ole Miss or Oregon for a shot to kind of try and sneak into the playoffs or something over a different team. Maybe. That sounds like a cool idea that I've just come up with on the spot. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. That is a lot of games. You don't want to be putting too many games. But then again, the championship week games, there's already teams playing, and so you almost are benefited. It is Alabama at 9. So far, everything remains the same. Everything remains the same. Alabama at 9, and so the precedent has been set. You make a college football or a conference championship game, you will not be penalized. You can only go up. You cannot go down. And I love that. I just love that, especially because teams aren't playing. The lower-seeded teams aren't playing. The higher-seeded teams are. There should be no reason to be penalized because, again, you're playing a really high, top-ranked, good-seeded team most of the time. Cough, cough, ACC, what are you doing? But you're usually playing tougher-ranked opponents when you're in the SEC and the Big Ten. It's usually higher-ranked teams are playing each other. So, not surprised to see Alabama in at 9. But now here's the big question, and this is where everyone's fighting after. And if ESPN's smart, which I don't think they're going to do because it's also not really smart. I'm not going to say if ESPN's smart, but it would be fun and exciting if they skip over the 10 spot and they go right to 11. Because we kind of know 11's going to be Tulane and 12 will be JMU, or we so think. But let's see. I believe they're going to announce 10 next. And this is where things get exciting. Here we go. Who is number 10? Are they going to show it? We're waiting. Alabama at 9. Going to play Oklahoma. That's going to be a fun game. That is going to be a really, really fun game. Oklahoma had already gone to Alabama and won. Now Alabama the chance to go back. And oh my God, it's Miami. Wow. Okay. That is honestly, in my opinion, awful. Wow. It's Miami. Oh, wow. That is so incredibly unfortunate for Notre Dame that basically their entire season was decided by the first game. I understand head-to-head matchup, but come on, it's the first game of the season, and you've got a young quarterback in his first game versus Carson Beck, who's in season whatever. Wow, that is... I'm surprised. I'm stunned. I am stunned. Okay, so it's gonna be Miami. It's Miami. Um, what year is this for Carson Beck? This is year 3. I mean, wow. Damn. So Notre Dame's this whole, and that's what's so unfortunate about this whole thing. But Notre Dame's entire season was literally decided by their first 2 games, because they lost week 1 and week 2 to 2 teams that finished the season in top ranked spots. They got eliminated. That is shocking. That is so incredibly surprising. I'm gonna be honest. I'm stunned. I am really. I really thought that it kind of seemed set that Notre Dame was the higher ranked team, and it was kind of set in stone. Clearly not. As the committee goes with Miami at 10, and now we're gonna see Tulane and JMU 11, 12 respectively. Respectively. If Duke gets in, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be livid, because I don't think Duke's better than JMU. I'm gonna be honest. JMU's playing pretty good football. Um, but we'll see. So I guess Miami's 10. And again, and this is another thing that I'm gonna bring up, and I probably should have brought up earlier in the show, is my opinion on the whole conference rank, the top 5 seeded conference ranking or conference winners, and how dumb that is. Great, you want to put a Boise State and an Arizona in, sure. Does Cam Scadaboo not get as much popularity? Tulane gets in at the 11th seed as the 20th ranked team. Like, what are we doing? Like, Tulane is about to get smoked again by Ole Miss. Like, what are we doing, man? They've already been smacked by Ole Miss. Now they get to go to Ole Miss. They lost 45-10. Ole Miss put 548 yards of offense on their head. Wow, Tulane actually won. They had almost 5 more minutes of possession over Ole Miss. It's kind of crazy, but like, come on. Like, I understand that that's the rules and whatever that they put in place, but like, Tulane's gonna get smoked, JMU's gonna get smoked. It'll be like SMU and Boise State all over again, and like whatever. But and the 24th ranked team, wow, they moved up 1 spot. They probably jumped North Texas. North Texas is probably 25, and JMU moved up to 24. And these guys are going crazy. They're electric. They're so happy. They're in. They're ranked. They're all this, that, and the other thing. Incredible and good for them, and deservingly so. I think that there's no reason for Duke to be in. But okay, so that is your college football playoff bracket right there. I'm just gonna get a quick photo on my phone of it, and now let's do a little quick prediction. Let's do a little quick prediction and run through it. Let's make this my prediction video right now. What I think is gonna go down. And of course, I'm gonna upload further content. The first team out's Notre Dame. Not surprising at all. I'm gonna make future videos, of course, as the rankings play out. But I mean, and BYU's the second team out. Not surprised. I think all the higher seeded teams are gonna win the first round. I think Oregon's gonna win. I just the way that Ty Simpson's gonna play, I really just don't feel comfortable picking Alabama. If Ty Simpson was playing better, if that Georgia game, that SEC championship game against Georgia was a lot closer, then I would probably go with Alabama. But just the way that played out, the way that the Auburn game played out, the way that he even played against Eastern Illinois 3 weeks ago, I'm gonna go with Oklahoma to win. I'm going with Ole Miss over Tulane, and I really think A&M's going to kind of smack around Miami. And so the next round would be Oregon versus Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Indiana, which is going to be a fun, exciting game. Ole Miss, Georgia, that'll be good. And then A&M, Ohio State. And I think Ohio State would win. I think Georgia wins. I think Indiana wins. I think Oregon wins. So you get Oregon, Indiana. That's going to be amazing. A rematch of that game. And you get Georgia, Ohio State. I think Georgia wins. I think Indiana wins. I think Georgia wins the Natty over Indiana. the way that Georgia's defense played last night, and I know that Indiana's defense also played really well, but Georgia's defense one was so much more dominant, and I think that Georgia's offense is kind of clicking at maybe potentially a higher level than Indiana's is. I think that would be an exciting game. So those are kind of my picks. Those are my predictions, and so that's how it went down. And I'm surprised, but Miami's in. So that's the college football playoffs. We got NFL coming up later today. I hope you do enjoy. If you did enjoy this content, check out more videos, like it, subscribe, more content coming out. Until then, take care and goodbye.